So, my goal is to try to better establish what the crap a slideshow commentary community is for those not in the know, because not too many people are in the know, and we've been here for years. We're kind of our own little niche. Some people show up, hear me talk about it, and don't know what it is, and yeah, let's talk about it. When you think about the commentary community, depending on who you are, you'll probably arrive to a plethora of different answers ranging from your Leafy Boys, to your Right Opinions, to your Turkey Toms, or Tom Dark, as I learned he's also going by. Maybe you guys think of the H-Bomber guys and Armored Skeptics if off the off chance you're more politically driven. I know YouTube tells me you guys watch a lot of Harley TBS, Spocker Tech, and those are all correct answers to come to. I don't really think there's too much of an invalid thought process on what kind of community makes up commentary, since it is such a broad genre that encapsulates a lot of facets to content creation. To me, though, there isn't just one commentary community, and I think trying to lump the likes of what Blaze the Movie Fan does to say someone like Augie RFC isn't exactly fair, since while they're both commentary in their style, their goals and topics differ greatly. And that makes sense. When you have such a genre as widespread as commentary, where the goal is to give an opinion or explanation to an event or situation, to give critique on where you think critique is due, then yeah, it's almost like it's going to be that people splinter off into their own subgenres and stylings that kind of separate us from the collective. I've heard that the individual labels come across as very arbitrary to people since, there's so much overlap, and to a degree they're right. At the end of the day, to the general public, we're all seen as the lowest common denominator, leeching on negativity because none of us have any original bones in our body, which is kind of an unfair assertion, but who am I to judge? The point is, yes, there is a lot of overlap to what these subgenres do, but I wouldn't call the labels of these subgenres arbitrary, as there is a very clear and defined goal within these individual channels. For instance, Harley reports on drama. Maybe they'll have a couple pennies laying about to give their 2 cents, but ultimately it's like YouTube news reporting. Not always my cup of tea, so to speak, but it does its job in being informative enough on the commentary culture. Spocker most of the time hovers within the art commentary box, talking about predominantly art-related topics, though he does branch out from time to time, especially in recent years. ZZ's is kind of a video essayist, I think, but ultimately it's still commentary about fandom at the end of the day. Tipster does livestream commentaries, I think. I need to eventually get around to watching his stuff. And then you have me. I'm kind of like an overglorified reply girl from the days of old. But all joking aside, I do what could be described as response commentaries, where I take an individual video and just talk about that. My goal is to give criticism and hopefully be entertaining enough while I do it. Whether or not I succeed is subjective. Personally, I think I'm too to the point to really be one of the haha funny peeps of our community, but you don't always have to be funny to be entertaining, or so I'm told. The point is, my goal is to talk about individual videos, give my critiques on the video, and maybe debate the points that are given in them. It's not usually about big, broad topics like some of these other subgenres. I'm not out here sniffing out the next big creepshow art to talk about. It's not that serious, is what I'm trying to say. So let me go over some talking points and give you kind of a rundown to the best of my ability as to what this community is, what it does, and what it is trying to accomplish. Give you guys some recommendations to some of my fellow colleagues and friends, and I also took suggestions from Twitter and my community tabs for some extra things to talk about. As of writing this part of the script, I don't know how much was added from that, but we'll see in the finished product, I guess. Let's begin. What is slideshow commentary? The earliest SCC members, of course, didn't call the community the slideshow commentary community, but instead just call it what everyone else calls their subsects of the community and broaden the generalized term. The name slideshow commentary was something I coined joining this community as a reference to the visuals these videos took at the time, which were, for lack of a better descriptor, very 2008 slideshow AMV-esque. Which I'm not saying is a bad thing. My earliest videos in this style were like that, and I joined in 2015, but that's truly the best description that I can give the format. We will play individual segments from videos before cutting to whatever anime, video game, cartoon, movie, wrestler sometimes that we want to use as our talk sprites to argue or critique what we just played. Mind you, in recent years, we in the community have kind of started distancing from these particular avatars, either to opt into using our original characters, gameplay, or speed art footage, kind of like every other community, but the name will probably stay, not only because it helps differentiate us from people who don't do this style, but also because it calls back to our roots, and it's not like everyone has moved on anyway. As for the format outside of presentation, as stated before, it's response commentary. We take someone else's video and argue it, critique it, and maybe throw in some funny skits and ha-has in there for good measure. It's a very standard kind of format that again dates back to the days of reply videos. The topics are extremely varied, ranging from something as benign as flawed reasoning behind subjective stances on video games, to something more serious like politics or drama. Oftentimes, you'll see a lot of us in this community cover anime topics or Pokemon, but if you just watch me, that's more or less a rarity. The goal of the slideshow commentary is criticism first and foremost, but oftentimes a lot of us will also strive for a level of entertainment to go along with it, either in the form of light nudging at our target's expense, to varying degrees of success, skits where we get a cameo from a fellow member, creating characters for us to bounce off of, or even creating a whole ongoing story to go along with the commentaries themselves. Mind you, obviously this isn't as far as it goes, mileage does vary, but it's a general good idea as to what to expect the more you branch out. Slideshow commentary also has this habit of doing what are known as multi-degrees, which typically are very confusing for newcomers. Like, I frequently see people come into sizable multi-degrees very confused, and while I personally think they're easy to understand, I'll break this down for those who might not fully get it. A multi-degree is when a commentator covers another commentary. The base video, or the root, is degree 0, with every subsequent commentary after it adding to said degree chain. So, for an example, let's say the base video is talking about why a cartoon character's genitalia is fucking gross, with degree 1 saying that the base video is overreacting, and then degree 2 comes in explaining how they're not. Then more commentators come in arguing about whether or not the penis is disgusting for like 6 degrees. Or say the base video is talking about why Twilight Sparkle has autism, with degree 1 coming in to make fun of the base video for being autistic themselves. And then an argument breaks out with an upwards of 12 degrees of just people in favor of or against the bullying of an autistic man. Mind you, these are both very old examples, neither would slide in today's SCC, but I do hope that paints a somewhat accurate picture to what a degree chain can look like. In another way, think of it like a comment thread, with each subsequent commentator specifying which arguments they're debating from the previous guy. These can be as short as like 2 or 3 replies to an upwards of 20. The record currently being 21, held by me. God help us if that's ever broken. I will admit that sometimes commentary chains can get a little convoluted. We have a pretty infamous one in our community known as the Blob That Ate Everyone, containing an upwards to 139 total videos, 140 if you count the lost one, that branch and intertwine with each other to the point some parts of the blob are completely removed from others, and that could be its own history lesson entirely, but at this point I'm rambling. The goal of a slideshow commentary is to respond to videos, give possible feedback that a creator could maybe use to better their future work, possibly. It's mostly in good fun. A lot of us see critique and deconstruction as an enjoyable hobby, despite how much we'll sometimes joke about being in pain whilst we cover these videos. We're kinda weird like that. Now, hearing this, you might be thinking that other notable commentary communities aren't that much different. I'm sure the right opinion wouldn't do these multi-hour-long analysis of creators and dramas if you didn't to some degree enjoy critique. And you're correct. Literally anyone who does commentary does to some degree. We ain't special in that regard. But then, how does it differ from other commentary communities? Admittedly, this question is a bit hard for me to exactly pinpoint, because I definitely know there is a differentiation. Like, you put us in a lineup with other commentators and you'd be able to pick us out pretty easily. But I'm not, like, sure how to put it into words. I guess intent? I feel like that would be the big one. I notice some of the people who try to break into specifically this community think of us either like what Leafy did, or think of us like the drama boys. Those channels certainly have their place. The drama boys talk about things that are typically seen as a bit more important, explaining what problematic behaviors to look out for in a person, typically if they're abusive, overtly sexual, or slimy. You know the ones. And the remnants of the Leafy boys are pure, unadulterated entertainment. Cringe culture might be dead, but fuck it, we enjoy the fire. So I'm not knocking them, even though I do have my criticisms. Those criticisms are not important. The point is, people are very quick to assume the type of content we do is one thing over what it actually is. While we're no stranger to drama, it's certainly not our bread and butter, and most of us would rather avoid it if given the opportunity. I know that kind of stunts our overall growth because drama is what brings in those numbers, and petty response videos aren't exactly the most appealing forms of content to the general public. But it's what we like doing. It's relatively easy content to make, and personally, I may just be speaking for myself when I say this, making drama content is not as fun as just covering a more benign topic like this guy says being slow is worse than bestiality in his Sonic list. I don't know, it's all in good fun over here. We get entertainment out of a good debate, and we hope to further bring that entertainment to our audience. However, we're also not out here to bully people, despite how frequently we get labeled as such. We do give our critique, and sometimes it can come off as a little on the harsher and sometimes more vindictive tone, but even that can just be boiled down to poor form. It happens. Generally speaking, unlike the few leafy bros there are left out there, we try to focus on making a point. Even if it's a bad point, even if it comes in the form of how one addresses the topics they cover, even if it comes across as really nitpicky sometimes. A point is more often than not trying to be made, so we're a little bit of both categories, but like a happy medium to the more extreme sides of commentary, you know? We're very room temperature is what I'm trying to say. Not everyone's cup of tea, but we like it that way. There's also, of course, the general aesthetic of everything. Again, I know in recent years the slideshow commentary community at times has become visually indistinguishable from other communities in certain videos, but like, overall we still use anime avatars. We'll still make videos where we present ourselves in avatar form. We still make these like really fun intro cards that some people are just super good at making. We still interact with each other more frequently than other communities. We'll still use skip cards to show our audience what we're skipping. The roots of our community still exist, even if they're not always present, and that presentation is definitely one of our more defining factors when putting us in a lineup. It's not to say that other communities don't use avatars. You can look as far as the art commentary community to see examples of another community that does something similar. However, considering our broader topics, the way we present our points in a responsive you say, I say way, and the kinds of avatars we use, you can still 9 times out of 10 pick out a slideshow commentator from an art commentator, and after all is said and done, if on the off chance you find one of the rogue commentators out there in the wild that happens to share a lot of what I've described here, at that point it just kind of comes down to their own association, because really that's the ultimate deciding factor, isn't it? How they wish to associate. But generally these are good keynotes to what makes us, you know? I hope that makes sense. Who do you recommend in this community? Alright, so this is probably the longest segment of the video because it'd be really easy to just recommend myself alongside the likes of Blaze the Movie Fan and Ponder Sprocket, as we are, as of this video, the 3 biggest names that either associated or still do associate with this community. But instead I think I'm just gonna throw a bunch of names at you guys because while I do certainly have my own favorites and people I would recommend very highly, I wouldn't want to just brush off those that I don't watch that frequently, as I think everyone in this community has their own strengths and weaknesses, and a good recommendation is one that comes down to what the individuals themselves are looking for. So I'm going to try my best to categorize what I personally think are the strengths each of these commentators excel at, and just kind of throw them all at you guys. You can determine what to do with these names on your own time, and who knows, maybe you'll find an inspiration or a favorite amongst them. So if you're here at this video, there's a pretty decent chance you already watch my pretty subpar content. I like to think of myself as more of a point-driven kind of gal. I'm not exactly a CC funny woman. And so if you like the way that I tackle a video and want a focus more on the debatey side of the SCC, I could easily recommend the likes of Stagmaster15, who brings his own brand of dry wit to the table, but also sticks in that middle ground tone that shows which side of commentaries he's much more focused on. Kirby Star Warrior is really good at clarifying points in a more concise way that allows an audience member to understand something that they otherwise might not grasp. Bummer Patrol is another good example of a commentator who's direct. Then there's Pink Robot, who's kind of garnered a reputation in this community as the SCC wildcard. She might be a bit hard to fully grasp given her text-to-speech delivery, but like, I say it's worth watching if you like what I do over here. On a more extreme side, I guess I could bring up the more politically inclined of this community, I guess. Look, not all of us steer clear of the mentally exhausting topics. Some of us embrace it, and this can be certainly seen in the likes of people like Toganium, Neko Koda, and Automagic Critic, who all 3 I know have recently been diving into those kinds of topics. Nothing wrong with that, mind you, it's just something that I've noticed. And hey, you know what? There's an audience for that. And people like Darkness Stone and Jokun, the latter who I wasn't even sure associated with us to begin with, but he's got an SCC page and he's in POG, so who am I to argue? But these are people who do kind of teeter in that Venn diagram center of drama channel and slideshow commentator. At least that's what I kind of gathered looking at Jokun's page. I'm not exactly sure on that one, though. I also know that Hiten Mitsuru has plans to kind of cover some topics like the latter category, so maybe you can also watch her if you're interested to see her takes about that. She also does D&D stuff, too. Watch her Lore of Laureate stuff. That said, if you want people who are more driven by the notion of being entertaining without teetering the line of joke channel, I can highly recommend Avi Haltman CTSW, who does most of the writing for the police videos that we do over here on my channel, in case you want a good idea of what kind of humor he has. Bowser Dude X, who I can best describe as a living meme machine, as he kinda just bounces shit off a wall and see what lands. Bennett the Human, whose commentaries are all currently hiding in a void, but from what I've seen has a certain sarcastic wit to them that I don't see from many other commentators. And Sarah Dust, who just exudes crackhead energy. Like there's not a better way to describe him. I could also recommend people like Keyblade Master and Mr. A and Dr. Mario 360. Both who maybe don't always hit that funny bone to me, but both are pretty good at being that middle ground, enough to where I could definitely see someone liking their content. I would also be remiss if I didn't acknowledge the flat-out joke channels like Master TP10's Almighty Pickle, Artemi Musha's Monsieur Popo, and my own Cancer the Weeaboo. But teetering just off that line, like if you really want to push your level of jokesters in the SCC, then you can look to Rank 7 Yu-Gi-Oh!, also known as Lorenzo. He's been around a while and is very commonly seen by outsiders as just a troll account, but like, I promise you, he's not. As someone who has worked with the guy in the past, he is a legitimate commentator in our community. He just presents it way differently than the rest of the community does, and that's not a bad thing by any means. It's just the biggest juxtaposition from the rest of the community by far, and like, he doesn't really get acknowledged that frequently in the community anymore, but he's still kicking, he's still around, and maybe you could check him out too. If you want people who I think are our best editors, people who really push that boundary on what a slideshow commentary can look like, then I will immediately point you to the likes of Horace Tome, who's always been one of the SCC's best editors, bar none. Luxter, who will never admit to being a phenomenally great editor, but will promptly be fought when denying it. Yes, I'm calling you out, sir. Tuyun, whose editing isn't exactly the most complex, but it's still a style I kind of vibe with. It's like a mix of old school SCC and modern SCC. It's unique for sure. And Hypochromia, who, while I will say sometimes needs to work on their audio balancing and argumentation, definitely is an underrated editor in this community. I've never seen someone go so far out of their way to give their stills that much life before, and I definitely have to commend their patience with keyframing as much as they do it. Like, no cap, they have a lot of potential. If you want to see more of what our SCC veterans do, I can promise you they definitely don't post that frequently, you know, they have lives, but when they do, it's normally an event because they're very good at what they do. People like Artemi Musha, who personally is one of my favorite commentators. TOG Professor, if he ever decides to post again, he was my inspiration for commentaries. YBS91, also known as Hobbs, who used to be seen as a figurehead of the community circa 2011. Ricky Ray 102, he's normally got a good grip on both argumentation and humor. A lot of the stuff of his that I've seen has aged pretty well, at least to my recollection. Loudman Styles, who's probably been around the longest out of any of us. Scarlet Otaku, Master TV10, Azumanga Diofan 101, Space Guru 5, Realm Wars II. There's quite a few of them still around, actually. Point is, if you wanted to know kinda how the slideshow commentators of old did their videos, some of these, especially their older work, could definitely give you an insight to that. If you like the idea of ongoing stories in commentaries, something that our community had picked up on fairly recently, you have the likes of Lunatic the Game, who got their Persona-styled commentary lore Arcana commentaries. Firebolt PT, who's been building up this anime of his for a bit now. Boonslayer, arguably the originator for ongoing stories and commentaries, if not Solar Fenrir. And, because I've been holding off on mentioning him up to this point, Aaron Tempest, the man of lore himself, who, look, unironically is probably the best commentator in this community. Like, it's really hard to find another person who kinda just checks a lot of boxes to what someone might be looking for in this community. Just, generally, give him a watch. You're doing yourself a disservice not doing so. I need to close out this segment eventually, and while I could keep throwing names out there, and I would love to list off the likes of Dark Carnival Commentaries, Donimation, Umbrus, Codename 401, Barrel Cord, Azoth 101, Mezzy Monster, Maz, Comet Coon, Enigma Phantom, Blazing Larvesta, Avalonian Sky, 64 BC Man, Blazing Hope, Daisy Foxtrot, Fractured Light, A Justice 90, Sword Cine, Sean S, Supersonic Warp 15, Pepper Tay, Mavscom Dump, Jeff's Tube Stuff, Limbo Foz Frame, Angel Sentoki, Transformers Fanco 328, Crimson Paladin, Raven Pines Commentaries, Nova Starshock, 8363 MTR, and probably a small handful that I'm forgetting. This community sometimes even escapes my own scope of people that I know, which is why, to close out this segment, I'll recommend the channels of the Purely Odd Grandmasters and the Cloud Palace. These are group channels that act as a hub for us slideshow commentators to work together and kind of advertise better. And so if you just want to be introduced to the other community members, you really can just go browsing. Like, most of the community members are in at least one of these two groups. How do you join this community? I guess the same way you join any community, really. You jump in, make content that coincides with what the community does, interact with its members, and willingly choose to associate with us, and boom, you're a part of the community, I guess. Like, we're not gonna gatekeep if someone truly does wish to associate with us. We try to be more welcoming than that. This might just be me being cynical, but the worst case scenario is you come in, do some stupid shit, and give us commentary material. Or worse than that, you become one of those more distanced from members that have a pretty overall negative stigma surrounding them. Not from making bad videos, mind you, we all do that here and we understand it happens, but because you decided to maybe start some shit with our locals. Either way, in the words of the only outsider who has acknowledged this community in a positive light thus far, Mally Malware, it comes down to vibes. How much do you gel with the members that are already here? Do you intend to make a good first impression or a bad one? Like, we're a small village, really. Most of us know each other on a somewhat decent level, and even if we don't always get along, there's a level of connection between us. It truly is a commentary community. Roll credits. I never really understood why this question is so common, and nor have I particularly cared for it. It implies that because we're so tight-knit that we're basically gated off, but put it this way. When I joined, I didn't even know this community existed, let alone was out to ingrain myself in it nearly as much as I am now. People found me, hated my stuff, rightfully so, it sucked, and then reached out to me to try to be chill with me. Now I'm making a video explaining what this community is to outsiders. I've been labeled as a figurehead by many antis as much as I hate that label. I run the biggest commentator group this community has ever seen, and some people who willingly did join this community, for some reason, cite me as an inspiration. My joining was a total accident, but here we are. Just get involved. That's really the best way to join anywhere, period. Even to groups outside the SCC. Miscellaneous questions from you. I was going to bring up the criticisms the SCC faces in this segment, but I decided against it. If you really want to hear the criticisms we get super often, I have a video about that on my second channel. So, to move on from that, I did ask you guys to bring up some additional questions about the community to answer. Some of you guys asked things that I already planned on bringing up, or maybe they were kinda similar in their vibes, so I just wound up with 4 of them to really play on. So, to address each individually, when planning for topics that you'll be commentating on, is there a set topic that you need to follow? Do you have to focus on a specific controversy/situation that seems popular/serious, or can you talk about something less serious? We don't really care what you cover. As I said, the SCC pockets a wide scope of topics that can range from political discourse to something as silly as video games. The main defining points of a slideshow commentary is individual video critiques done in a certain stylization, so ultimately the topics you cover is up to you. In fact, I highly recommend talking about the things you're passionate about, because those tend to make for better commentaries. Is the only way to get in the limelight, as it were, just to have a popular or semi-popular people commentate on you, or is there a pipeline to follow to get noticed? I guess both? I don't know, this question is weird to me. Like, if you wanted the limelight, why join a community where it's rare to see a member get over 1,000 subscribers, and even rarer to see a member with 10k? I mean, I guess unless this video somehow gets more people interested in what we do and the climate of the community as a whole changes, if you're coming in here for clout, you're joining the wrong community, buddy. But I guess from a relative standpoint, if you want to be noticed within this community, then yeah, you're probably gonna have to talk to people, obviously. We're already in a position where we kind of need to be told when someone is even associating with the community to begin with, because some people share our general aesthetic while being explicitly distant from us. Otherwise, yeah, even someone as secluded as Pink Robot still needed someone to point out her existence to the rest of us for a starting point to get her mechanical foot through the door. I don't know what to tell ya. So, I'm not new here, but I have always wondered, what happened to the SCC in 2011 and 2012 that changed it so drastically? I've heard it referenced here and there, but since it's been so long, I don't know if the records of it still exist. Answering that, or perhaps giving a brief overview of the history of the SCC, would be really cool. I mean, I only joined in late 2015, so everything I've heard are the campfire stories from the longer-lasting members. They can probably speak up in the comment section to correct me if I'm wrong, but I know there was a video by an ex-community member called Beastly Evie that talked about how she didn't really support gay marriage but wouldn't lose sleep over it being legalized, and a series of very vague events led to the big shot at the time, MSkull01, known currently as Baseclef Eli, kinda harassing her over it. Some other members of the community spoke up about it, and Eli wound up taking shots at as many people as he could on Twitter, leading to the eventual burnout of members and probably killing a lot of the drive from the community at large. Arguably, a year later, another ex-commentator, who at the time was known as Ryan Rhino Mills, who is presently a trans woman by the name of Rachel Mills, came in with her own commentaries, which undeniably sparked back up enough interest to kind of revive the community and kind of change the general climate of how we approach video creation. Considering what's been going on with her currently, allow me to say that is not an easy statement to say in modern times, but that might be a story for another day. Maybe for a future video, I'll try to get a bunch of members together and we can make a cohesive history lesson for newcomers. That could be a lot of fun, actually. I wouldn't mind yelling about the Alt-CC drama again. What I'm more inclined to know is why aren't there more of these types of commentaries being featured or being made? Has there really been little to no controversy to commentate on? I mean, we make commentaries rather frequently when you watch enough of us. The problem is that individually it takes time to put these videos together. It's not always the easiest to find bad enough videos that we really care to cover. And, most importantly, a lot of us still have lives, either bogged down by our work or our school. Most of us are in our teens to our 20s. We don't always have the time to dedicate to video making, especially not since most of us kinda just do this as a hobby. Them's the breaks, I'm afraid. Conclusion, I guess? So I hope this video gives you the incredibly brief crash course on a little-known community of, actually, nerds that have been here for easily over a decade now. Maybe I'll do more videos like this where I just go more in depth of the community's history, though that'll require a lot of help from people that were around during each major SCC history event. But I'm sure I could manage piecing something together if you guys have become more interested. That said, I also hope I've introduced you guys to some other members of our community. I hope you guys find some favorites, and generally, I hope you guys have a good day. Take care.